Last week, I wrote a letter to Jay Clayton, the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, asking him about this guy. This is Carl Icahn, the billionaire financier and buddy of our president, Donald Trump. It seems that he had a massive amount of stock in a company that sells cranes and equipment, which, in case you didn't know, are made of a lot of steel. Then all of a sudden, Mr. Icahn sold his position in the crane and equipment maker. 1 week later, his friend, buddy pal, and fellow billionaire, Donald Trump, announced he was proposing import tariffs on steel and aluminum. Now, we all know what happens to the stock of companies heavily dependent on steel and aluminum when the president announces he will impose new tariffs. Their stock prices go down a lot. So I guess you could say that Carl Icahn was lucky to unload his shares, valued at least $31 million, just before the president made his announcement. But I suspect that luck had nothing to do with it. Here is a Trump insider making a gigantic decision on tens of millions of dollars, and we're just supposed to believe it's a coincidence. Sorry, but I'm not buying it. So I wrote the chairman of the SEC to request that he investigate. I have not heard back from him, but I hope after he hears this speech, he might have a change of mind. In the letter, I said, quote, "The announcement of tariffs on the heels of Mr. Icahn's stock sale is highly suspicious. The close relationship between the president and Mr. Icahn adds to the appearance of wrongdoing. So I think the SEC has an obligation to investigate because it looks bad. And we're all talking about the president of the United States, and the people have a right to know that things are on the up and up." Let's remember that Icahn left as an advisor to Trump at the White House because we are told it would raise difficult conflicts of interest. And presumably, just like the president, Icahn was not interested in selling off part of his empire just that he could appear impartial and demonstrate core integrity to the American people. The president, who many of us think is profiteering illegally from the office, and we have filed articles of impeachment because of it, seems to attract a lot of people with deep pockets and shallow reserves of judgment to his side. Icahn, who was a notorious corporate raider and vulture capitalist during the Clinton boom years of the 1990s, appears to me and a lot of others to fit this mold. If there is nothing to hide in this deal, then the investigation will be quick, and that will be that. But simply saying this multi-million-dollar stroke of luck was just a coincidence is not flying. Not with me anyway. Do you know the rigorous reporting of assets that we as House members have to do to fully disclose our debts and investments? And all those disclosures are available to the public, and the press goes over them with a fine-tooth comb? Every time a member of Congress buys or sells a security over $1,000, we have to file a form, and then that gets shared with the public. And if we're late with the filing of the paperwork, we have to pay a fine. This may seem burdensome, but the important goal here is transparency and to ensure that members are not using insider information and that they access personally to enrich themselves. If I was as lucky as Carl Icahn to make a stock trade that my friend had the power to tell me the inside information on, and it resulted in me making millions of dollars or avoiding losing millions of dollars, well, let's see. There would be investigative reporters, hearings, ethics committee report, maybe even criminal charges. But Mr. Icahn and his buddy, the president, nothing, at least not yet. Let's demand that the friends who circle the White House and the Trump businesses provide the American people with answers and transparency. That's all we ask, so that we can have greater confidence in our president and his family, that they are not running a kleptocracy like we see in Russia, where those who govern are simply governing to make money. Mr. Speaker, no tax returns, very little in the way of disclosure, recusals that don't seem to actually be recusals, hotel and business conflicts of interest, and the strong order of something fishy. Those close to the president who are making millions, apparently because of the proximity to the president. Those people demand scrutiny from watchdog agency, and in this case, it requires an investigation of Carl Icahn by the SEC. I ask, Mr. Speaker, that my letter to the Honorable Jay Clayton, Chairman of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission of last week, be entered officially into the record.
Without objection. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the President. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Jones, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. A week ago, Barbara Lee and Tom Cole sent a letter to the Speaker of the House signed by 100 members of Congress, including myself, asking the Speaker to authorize the committees of jurisdiction to bring an AUMF, that's an authorization of military force, so that we can have a debate. The last time we had a policy debate on